Hey everyone, so after months of delays, the trial of former Theranos CEO Elizabeth Holmes has finally started last week. Here, business and tech reporter Scott Budman has been covering the trial since and way before. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But for the folks out there, Scott, that don't know and aren't familiar with this case, this very popular case, why don't you tell us what exactly it's about?
Sure, Abby. Elizabeth Holmes dropped out of Stanford at 19 years old. Very smart, very ambitious. She started a company called Theranos with the idea of making it much easier and less painful to draw blood. Many of us have been to Quest or LabCorp, take several vials with a big needle. For some, it's frightening. She had the idea that a single drop of blood from a finger stick could lead to dozens and dozens of tests. And obviously it didn't come true, but there was much funding and even patients who were told the wrong results as Theranos went on, and that's why we're in court now.
Okay, so she's being accused of lying to all these.
She's being accused, yes, of lying and deliberately defrauding investors out of hundreds of millions of dollars, but also deliberately lying to patients who were given results that were wrong.
And this idea of getting all of these medical tests and results out of just a little bit of blood is something we've never heard of before, right?
Right. It's sort of a pipe dream. I mean, the idea that, many of us have been to LabCorp or Quest, and you take a certain amount of blood and they can tell you all sorts of things. The idea that it would be just a little bit of a drop of blood has never happened before. And many of the people who were trying to advise Elizabeth Holmes along the way were saying, this isn't possible. Even some of her employees who had scientific backgrounds were saying, this is a great idea. It's just not possible yet.
Wow. Okay, but yet she got a lot of funding.
$9 billion was the valuation, which meant hundreds of millions of dollars were pulled in by investors. Some very high profile, Rupert Murdoch, the media king. Some from here on Sand Hill Road, many venture capitalists who I talked to and interviewed about this and who stuck with her to the very bitter end because they were convinced by her that she had something that hadn't been done before.
So Elizabeth Holmes has been making headlines for a while now, and you were talking to me about it earlier. You've been covering her and sort of this entire situation for a long time. Give me that timeline. How's it been?
Sure. Well, she dropped out at 19 and just past 2010 and about 2011, she started Theranos. It was under the radar for a while, hiring a lot of people, trying to develop a machine that would test all the samples of blood that you could give it. And it wasn't working. But more people were hired, more venture money came in, the company was worth even more. As you mentioned, she became famous. She started dressing in turtlenecks a la Steve Jobs. She was, as half owner of the company, a billionaire, a legit self-made billionaire. Or was it legit? The questions started to be asking when the Wall Street Journal started to look into it. There was a book written in about 2017 called Bad Blood that really opened our eyes to Theranos. Then Vice President Biden was here in their Newark facility. I remember covering that, and he was saying, having lost a son, how important it was to research and how much the nation was looking forward to what Elizabeth Holmes was doing. It turned out it was all fraudulent, and in 2017 and 2018, even into 2019, I was talking to the venture capitalists here in Silicon Valley, and they were stunned that they had lost so much money behind an idea that they believed in that turned out to be worthless.
Every eyeball out there in America and the world, I should say, is looking at this case so closely. Why is it so important?
That's hard to say, Abby. My best guess, because a lot of people will literally come up on the street and say, what's the latest on Elizabeth Holmes? People are fascinated with her in kind of a soap opera way. She was built way up. She was on magazine covers. She was worth somewhere around $4 or $5 billion, and then it all came crashing down. Think about every reality show or soap opera that you've ever sort of enjoyed as a guilty pleasure. I think a lot of people are looking at this in that way.
Yeah, this is very interesting, of course. And I want to ask you lastly here, obviously we don't know what the future holds and what will happen, but we know that she could be facing up to 20 years in prison if she's convicted. How likely is that, and what do you predict, could happen in this case?
It's hard to say, and I rarely cover court, so that part is kind of new to me. But as far as these cases go, I'd be surprised if she got 20 years, but I'm also surprised, frankly, Abby, that we're this far. Here's somebody who was about to get married. She's recently had a child, and for some reason, the last couple of years, she didn't just settle and try to put an end to this. She is still as notorious, if not more notorious than she ever was. She's facing a long time in prison. She's only 37, and she has a new baby at home, and yet she's going forward with this case. Somebody's got to tell her there's likely at least some prison time ahead. and this could get ugly and last a long time. And so I really don't know how much of a hammer is going to come down here, but the prosecution says it has a lot of evidence, even evidence we haven't seen yet.
Wow. Okay, well, I know you're going to be covering this case closely, so make sure to follow Scott on his social media channels. I'll put him up here. Scott, thank you so much. This was very insightful.
Anytime. Thank you, Abby.
Thanks, guys, for watching.